Hey everyone, Felix from Nintendo Life here, and today I'm joined by Alex and Sion.
Oh, it's only flipping us.
Oof. Hello.
So today we wanted to sit down and ponder the idea, what if the Switch had failed? The Switch has done tremendously well. We just got word that it has sold 146 million units. But what if it wasn't always like that? What if it did a Wii U too? Well, we just thought it would be fun to sit down and talk about it because we would be in such a different position in our lives if it wasn't for the Switch. Yeah, we owe a lot to it. So let's talk about a not so funny thing. Well, it's nice because we can sit here and be like, good thing that never happened.
I guess, there are a lot of negatives, I think, to think of in, a conversation like this. I think specifically because we're thinking about failure, right? But I was having a thought, and one of the positives that I took away, if the Switch didn't kind of change the game for Nintendo and for the industry, is I wonder if Nintendo would be a bit more silly like they were back before the Switch launched, during the Wii U era, during the Amiibo craze, during the 3DS, even during the Wii, we saw Nintendo was quite casual focused during the Wii era, but they still were, putting Reggie up on stage, having him say stuff like, "My body is ready." Or, he was just coming up with stuff like that. But nowadays with the Switch, it feels like Nintendo is taking everything a bit too seriously. Like they're trying to be too professional. Yeah, and I wonder if Nintendo kind of didn't get that, I don't want to say ego boost, but if they were just willing to take more risks, then maybe I feel like maybe they would be willing to take a few more risks if the Wii U was or if the Switch just didn't take off the way that they thought. So
I don't think I don't want to discredit what you just said, but we do live in a time where they did Labo and they've just released an alarm clock.
True.
They're not exactly straight down the middle sort of typical business practices, are they, for a video game company?
You're totally right. They are still silly. I think I just really miss that fun-loving, warm hug, Nintendo Direct that feels like a blanket. Instead, now it just all feels so I hate using. Yeah.
No, I totally get what you mean, Sion, that even though, as Alex says, that Nintendo is still doing funny and silly stuff, the Switch itself is a really good showcase of, if you look at any of the older systems, there's not the same charm to it. There's not a lot of, there's no music in the menus, and the menus themselves look kind of bland. So I totally get what you mean, that maybe they wouldn't have gotten that way. I mean, obviously, it doesn't really matter when it looks at the big scope of things because it worked out for them. But we have this job because of Nintendo have succeeded in that way. And Alex, you had a job before the Switch was even out. So can you understand how it was around that time? Was there a lot of doubt? Would Nintendo be able to pull it off?
Well, when the Switch was first properly launched, when it was revealed, there was loads of hype around it. But when it was first launched, it was kind of felt like all of that hype came from an echo chamber, and that may well be the case. But it definitely didn't it didn't burst out of the gate and everyone was like, "Oh yes, the Switch, everyone must buy it." Its success was still quite rapid, but certainly in those first few months, it was really exciting to be working, with a new console like that. But it has to be said, I went to the midnight launch in my admittedly, sort of small town that I live in of Swindon, and there was, I don't know, maybe 10 people. I mean, maybe there were more, but it definitely wasn't exactly, it wasn't bursting with people, to say the least. And I think there was a little bit of kind of reluctance left over from the likes of the Wii U, because that really was... That wasn't good from a commercial point of view. I still have a lot of love for the Wii U, but looking back on it, it's very easy to see why it didn't do so well. But yeah, let's just say that we would. I wouldn't say I was personally expecting a Wii U 2 in terms of its commercial performance with the Switch, but I was cautiously optimistic, let's say.
Well, I think you raise a good point too about like Wii U too, and it reminds me of a bit about the fact that the Switch didn't really seem like it was a massive graphical like jump over the Wii U at the time, and that I suppose like caused a lot of conversation. Like I remember even in my friend group, we were, when the Switch was first like officially announced, we were like, oh well, maybe the dock will boost the performance of the console, and it'll or of the handheld, and nowadays those aren't really discussions that we have now, unless if we're talking about the hypotheticals of Switch 2, but yeah, that could have gone very, very wrong, but it worked out.
Although arguably doesn't directly affect Nintendo, one thing that I do think the Switch has caused, and I would put money on the fact that it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the Switch's success, is portable gaming PCs, like basically born through the Steam Deck. The Steam Deck, I genuinely don't think we would have it if it weren't for the Switch, because the Switch was such a success. It showed that, hey, yeah, there's still a big market for portable gaming and people are hungry for it. And Steam saw a gap in the market, Valve, saw a gap in the market, and they were like, you know what we could do? We could do this. They released the Steam Deck, and I must admit, when it first released, I was like, what? Portable PC gaming? It'll never catch on. And I've never eaten my words quite so much as that.
It's wild how many, like, not competitors, but like just how many different portable PCs are out there now, right? And there's constantly, rumors that you hear now about like, oh, maybe Microsoft and Sony are going to be making their own portable PlayStation 5s and Xbox Series X's, and it's crazy to see how much the Switch has done in that regard. You're totally right.
I think it's the same with the Portal as well. I don't think the PS Portal would exist without the Switch.
No, that's true.
Because it again, the same idea that, oh, do people want to play it on the go? Oh, I don't know. Is it worth the investment? Nintendo Switch? Yes, it is.
You said an interesting thing to us here the other day, Alex, when we discussed this idea, that it was if Nintendo, like they had the funds. This absolutely blew my mind. You said that they could keep going, like they had enough budget to keep going for 70 years?
Yeah, this is something that I read online at the time, so do take it with a pinch of salt, absolutely. But insider sources and, people who, I say insider sources, people who understand money, unlike me, sort of looked at Nintendo's finances in the year 2014, which was, I believe, one of the worst years Nintendo's ever had. And, sort of they made a substantial loss that year. And someone ran the numbers, or a group of people ran the numbers and determined that, yeah, even though it was a bad year for Nintendo and people were like, oh, is Nintendo going to get out of the hardware market? What's going to happen? All that sort of thing. They could keep going, as you say, for another 70 years at that kind of loss, just because they've got so much in the bank, which I want that much in the bank.
I don't. That's too much.
Yeah, but think of all the good you could do. You could make a new Mario game.
True. Yeah, I'll make Mario Odyssey 2 before Nintendo.
Yeah. Well, it makes you wonder too then, like, would the theme park, like all the different theme parks in Florida that's coming soon, in California, in Japan, would all of those still have moved along? So I don't want to say quickly, but would they have, taken those leaps if the Switch didn't take off? Would they have made a Mario movie? Would they have done them but maybe not have had as much creative freedom? Like maybe would they have sold their souls? And maybe not, because like you said, they have all that money in the bank. But it does really seem like the Switch, Nintendo owes a lot of success to that these days. But yeah, from what you're saying too about how much money they had, it sounds like maybe they wouldn't go the way of Sega, where they just stopped making consoles altogether.
I mean, we could ruminate, but personally, just from my experience and my gut instinct, I think Nintendo would have to... I don't want to know what would happen for Nintendo to step out of the hardware market, because we saw sort of like glimpses of it with the things like mobile games and stuff like that. But, it's... the mobile games always felt a bit weird, and, you know, that's not a reason to say, oh, they would never do it because it feels weird. That's a rubbish argument. But they've been so ingrained in the hardware market, and a big thing about what makes Nintendo games stand out is not only the design and everything, but just how much they can milk out of their own systems. Like, there are games, you know, on the Switch where a third party could never dream of getting that much out of the console. Just because Nintendo made the console, they know exactly how it works, they know how to get every little bit out of it. And cue someone in the comments going, oh, well, why doesn't Echoes of Wisdom run well then? But that's not my point.
Well, if the Switch had failed, would Nintendo have gone back to making just pure handheld consoles and make like a proper system again? That's actually... Because they kind of banked on like, okay, now we're merging it and this is going to work. But what if it didn't? Would they go back to their old ways?
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, they were kind of testing the water with the Wii U, because the Switch is kind of a Wii U without the Wii. As weird as it sounds to say, it basically was the Wii U gamepad, but it was its own thing. It worked on the TV, it worked handheld, but it worked properly, you know? So, I mean... I wouldn't have put it past them to basically say, yeah, no, leave it to Sony, leave it to Microsoft, we'll just focus on handheld. And I think they probably could have done all right with it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, the DS, the 3DS, the new 3DS, I feel like they had some good tech going on there, especially with the new 3DS, even though it was like maybe a bit niche. But I think it's so cool, the 3D effect, the fact that it can lock onto your eyes with that little camera up there and it just works really, really well. I mean, props to Nintendo for always trying to do new stuff, and that's luckily why they are in the fortunate position today. But I imagine that if the Switch had failed, they'd try something new. Throw something new at the wall, because that's what Nintendo does so very often. Some things land, some things don't. I mean, we see Nintendo Labo. Didn't really land. We see Ring Fit Adventure. Well, that actually sold really well, even though it's you're making fitness with a ring. I mean, the concept is so bizarre, but give it to Nintendo and they will do their best to make it work. And boy, can they make it work.
If in theory, and I just want to do a thought experiment here, if in theory Nintendo did leave the hardware market, for whatever reason, this is just kind of pie in the sky thing. If they did, I want to know from you two, what do you think they would do? What platforms would they go to? How would they behave? Sort of what games would they release? What games wouldn't they release? I'm curious to sort of hear what you're ruminating in those little brains of yours. Not to say your brains are little. It's just in the
in comparison to the world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good save. I think. I mean, I could see them making games because if the Switch had failed, then PlayStation and Microsoft, they would probably have done better because then the Switch wouldn't have, I don't know, but they would probably still make games, make it for other platforms. I mean, they are so, they don't want to make their games for other consoles. So it would be so weird to suddenly see Mario on the PlayStation or Link on the Xbox. Yeah. But it could have happened because they make really good games. It was just that people weren't buying the Wii U. But there were still a lot of great games. I mean, we're still getting Wii U games on the Switch. I mean, they would still sell really well. But now a cut goes to PlayStation because that's the platform. So would the games be as good? Would there still be the same charm to them? Would they have the same freedom to do whatever they please and just make the most weird stuff? Or would they have to play by some rules to be able to... I mean, obviously they didn't because they could be going for 70 years, as Alex says. But... let's say they couldn't do that. Would they change the way they make games? Maybe. What do you think, Sion?
I feel like we'd see a lot more of just the standard Nintendo franchises. We'd see Splatoon 2 and 3 come to Xbox and PlayStation for, which maybe, wouldn't be the worst thing because then we'd have more people to play with online. I feel like we'd see Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom come to all the consoles, Mario Kart. Maybe we'd actually get Mario Kart 9 by now because Nintendo wouldn't have this game to bundle with console sales anymore, like hardware bundles. But I feel like we wouldn't get as many experimental titles like Pikmin 4 maybe just would have never existed if it didn't have the Switch to sell on.
A lot of
Animal
series.
Crossing would have got pushed back. I think there's a lot of games that really got the chance to breathe and grow on the Switch and series. And yeah, I mean you kind of already brought up this point, Felix, but yeah, I think Nintendo would have just leaned more into the stuff that they know works, because they thought the Switch would work, and in this hypothetical world it didn't, and that is a weird thing to think about, though. It is.
Yeah, a lot of series wouldn't be where they are today. I mean, you brought up Animal Crossing. 60% of its sales is the game that was on Switch, New Horizons.
Wow.
So
yeah.
It wouldn't. It's so mind blowing just how different things would be.
It would have sold less than half than it currently has.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, yeah, wow.
I mean, also Mario Kart is very popular, but oh my god, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe sold well. Sold so incredibly well. And we see it time and time again with the games. Just every franchise, the most sold game is just always on Switch, it seems, because we have so many people playing it and so many people buying new games. Such an active player base that, yeah, a lot of franchises wouldn't have that opportunity to grow like that and become, like, maybe a lot more franchises would have died away, unfortunately, or just not get a new game like they have on Switch. I mean, there's still a lot of franchises that haven't gotten a game on Switch, like Rhythm Heaven, and I mean, what if they still made handhelds then instead? Only handheld? Would we then see other types of games like Rhythm Heaven?
It's weird to consider the idea that the Switch may not be successful, looking back on it now. Yeah. But, I mean, I suppose it was, Nintendo aren't stupid. I mean, with the Wii U, sometimes it feels like it. But, Nintendo know what they're doing, and they know what is going to sell. They know what people want, what people like. And I think they absolutely nailed it with the Switch. As I said, as I've alluded to, they fumbled it with the Wii U. I think there are a lot of factors involved in why the Wii U wasn't a success. A big one being the marketing. Oh my god, just talk about the console. Don't and then they went too far the other way. Why we need a Wii U, and children explaining things to their parents. Do you have any idea who you're trying to appeal to? That doesn't appeal to children, and it doesn't appeal to adults. But I want to go back to the whole software thing for Nintendo. I have a little pet theory. I think if Nintendo ever did, for whatever reason, leave the hardware market, I think they would end up going exclusive with Sony and PlayStation, because they're a Japanese company as opposed to Xbox, Microsoft, which is a North American company. So there's kind of that sort of like familiarity for them. They could keep things exclusive again. They could, and they have the chops to be able to go up to Sony and say, look, we want to release our games on your system, but they will only ever be released on your system, and these are the stipulations we have. And Sony, they see, they've got Nintendo coming to their door saying, can we bring Mario to your console? Here's a few rules. They'll go, yes.
yeah.
And then they would maintain that kind of exclusivity that they enjoy. Not quite to the same degree, obviously, but, it's sort of like, oh, if you're a Nintendo fan, why bother getting an Xbox when you could just get a PlayStation, And you get all of Nintendo's games, and they'll be 4K 60. Ooh,
if
that
that
may not have
happened, then
still.
PlayStation would have a massive like advantage over Xbox, and then
the thing is, I think Microsoft would either have to duck out if Microsoft did duck out of the market, then there would be a sort of like a vacuum,
like a monopoly
for another company to fill, and whether that would be something like Steam, PC gaming or something like that, we don't know. But there's always whenever there's a vacuum, nature abhors a vacuum. We had Nintendo, Sony, and Sega, and then Sega fell off, and who comes in? Microsoft fills that void. And yeah, there was a period without anything, but it's just what happens. Someone else will swoop in. Maybe we'll get another Wonder Swan if that happens.
Bandai, please. What if Nintendo just worked with Sega? What if they
teamed up?
Oh.
Yeah, they just teamed up to make a brand new console. to take down PlayStation and Xbox, and maybe Bandai is also like, hey guys, we could do like a Wonder Swan thing as well.
It's an interesting thought. No denying that. But at the same time, Sega failed in the hardware market.
True,
and if Nintendo
true.
fails, I hardly think Sega's the people to wrench them out
but
of
you
the
know,
water.
a minus and a minus makes a plus, right? Maybe they work things out.
True.
Maybe, although it feels weird to talk about Nintendo in the context of doing badly in hardware and Sega.
Well,
Sega
yeah.
supporting them.
Well, let's just be grateful then that we are in the fortunate position that Nintendo are doing well. We are on the
Yeah.
horizon with a new console that they're going to announce before the end of March. We're really, really excited about that.
Ooh.
And let us know
Yeah.
down in the comments below what you think would have happened if Nintendo and the Switch had failed. If you enjoyed this, why don't you press that subscribe button so we as a channel don't fail and have to speculate about it in a future video? What if Nintendo Life had failed? And don't forget to check out our website, nintendolife.com, where you can find all sorts of Nintendo-related content. Stay safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Felix, Alex, and Sion from Nintendo Life, out.
Comment with the exact date that the Switch 2 will be revealed. If you get it right, you get a prize. The prize is...